I'm here with Kevin DeLange of Dry Dock Brewing in Aurora, Colorado, and I'm really excited to be here. I discovered this brewery in 2006 when I was in Aurora doing some work, and at that point it was literally in the back room of a homebrew shop. After discovering it, they made some great beers. I spent a lot of time here over those 3 weeks, so I'm really thrilled to come back and do this interview now. So tell me a little bit about the start of the brewery.
We started as a homebrew shop. We had the Brew Hut, and we had that since about 2002 or so. In 2005, a little space became available right next door. It was only about 800 square feet. That's the one you visited. Yep. And couldn't resist trying to make a go of the actual professional brewing and selling our beer. Thought since we had the homebrew shop, we'd definitely be able to start selling our beer to those customers who are obviously craft beer lovers. So we found the equipment. We rented that space next door. We got the equipment. We rounded up kind of a starter set that we got from a few different breweries that had upsized already, and we started again in 2005. It was October, and we were lucky enough in 2006, right off the bat in April, to get a gold at the World Beer Cup, and it kind of exploded from there. So just this last June, because we were getting so busy in the small space, we moved both the homebrew shop and the brewery into this space, which is much nicer and got a lot nicer system and much bigger fermenters. And since then, we've just been growing and growing, so it's worked out really well.
So you guys kind of cleaned up this year at the GABF. How many medals did you win?
We had 4, actually. We had 4 silvers, which was fantastic. We were lucky enough last year to get 3 medals, which was enough to get Small Brewing Company of the Year. And every time we go into one of these competitions, either the World Beer Cup or GABF, we're just hoping not to get shut out. And the last couple have been spectacular. We were able to get quite a few medals. So we did 4 silvers this year.
So I know you're about to start bottling. Talk a little bit about what plans do you have for the brewery coming up? How would you like to see the brewery progress?
We just got a lot more fermenters in place. We just doubled our capacity this last week. They just showed up during GABF week, and we also got a 6-head bomber bottling line from Maheen, which is a pretty popular bottling line for breweries when they start packaging. And our next step is to go ahead and be packaging in bombers. We're going to have some of our bigger beers and double IPAs and doubles and triples and such in bombers, and we're interviewing distributors now and hope to start packaging and distributing here in the next 2 months or so. Now that we got these fermenters in, we just need to get them filled up and get that beer in bottles and start to expand that way. If it takes off like we think it probably will, we've had so many distributors calling and we've had such demand for the beer lately that there's a chance here in the next couple of years we'll do another facility. We'll leave this like it is and have this be more of the tasting room bar spot, and then do an actual production brewery much larger somewhere else, maybe a couple years down the road. But next step is just to get these bombers out and see how that goes.
Can you talk a little bit about what would you be your philosophy of brewing, if you will? What do you want your beers to say?
The biggest thing we enjoy about being craft brewers and that we enjoy doing at Dry Dock is having a lot of different beers on tap. So in the tasting room, we shoot for 14 or 15 different beers, and we range anywhere from crazy big Belgians and experimental beers, and we do vanilla porters and apricot are a couple of our regular beers, and coffee stouts and that sort of flavored stuff. We also enjoy doing Firkins every Friday where we can experiment. But then on the other side, we really love making traditional styles of beer really well. This system's really tricked out to be able to make some German beers traditionally, and it's panned out in the last 2 GABFs. Most of our medals have been for German beers. The German Alt and the Hefeweizen medaled both of the last 2 years, and our Oktoberfest did last year. And so we enjoy both experimenting and also making traditional styles really well. And the biggest thing, we're looking for a big variety in the tasting room because we enjoy it. It's hard not to find something that just sounds fantastic if you've got 14 or 15 beers on tap. So
one of the things that really excited me when I first discovered you is that you had your recipes online on your website. And I haven't been to your website in a while, so I'm not sure if that's still up there, but I thought that was really sort of generous of you to just put recipes up, and I've brewed your ESB recipe many times. It's sort of become my house ESB. So what prompted you to just throw your recipes out there?
Because we started as a homebrew shop, we've always been helping people make beer, obviously, and we didn't have a problem with people having a shot at our recipe if they wanted to try to make it at home. And so we still do publish them. If anybody wants any of our recipes, we're happy to give it to them. We have our traditional 8 regular beers, our home fleet, we call them, on the website all the time. And if there's a seasonal somebody likes, they usually ask at the homebrew shop, and we scale it down to 5 or 10 gallons and give them a copy, or send us an email and we're happy to hand it out. Our thought is, it's hard enough for us to make the beer taste exactly the same every time, and so we aren't too concerned with somebody stealing our recipe or making it, and if we certainly aren't concerned with people doing it at home. So it kind of ties in with us trying to help homebrewers as well. We're still very much attached to the homebrew community, having the homebrew shop right here, so we're happy to pass that information along.
What was the biggest challenge or the biggest difficulty of transitioning from a homebrew shop owner to craft brewer?
There was a little bit of a learning curve. It helped a bunch that we were starting with really simple equipment that first time. It had been hard for me, not having any professional brewing experience or education and just being a home brewer, to go from home brewer to this setup, to this current system. There would have been a lot of hurdles to jump over, but it was easy for me to take it one step at a time. So we sort of had that starter set up. It was just a big simple mash tun. We were mashing much like you do at home, dumping the grain right in there. It just happened to be 500 pounds of grain instead of 20 pounds of grain. And there were a few new components with the counterflow chillers and some of the glycol systems, but taking it slowly made it a lot easier. The biggest hurdles have been just managing the growth and dealing with the demand outstripping the supply, which is a nice problem to have, but that's been our hardest part. And then we finally moved into this space last June and thought that we would have tons of space, and here we are a year later already contemplating expanding again and trying to figure out how we can get more people in here on Friday night and start to be able to package and distribute to liquor stores.
Did you have an opportunity to wander around the hall at the GABF at all?
Did on Friday night and Saturday afternoon for an hour or so before the awards started. So
you don't have to name any specific beers if you don't want to, but did you try anything that stood out to you?
The biggest thing for me were the sour beers. There were some fantastic sour beers this year, and I find myself more and more, especially during GABF, going for some of those sour beers, because it's really, I think, the next trend that's kind of taken off in craft brewing, and I think the demand out there is so big that I think we'll continue to see more and more sour beers being produced. So every year I tend to go for something different, whether it's a region or particular styles of beer, but this year it was sour beers, and there were some really good ones.
Any other trends you noticed out there? Things that might, besides the sour beers, that might project where craft beer is going?
The other thing that's just been really crazily popular in the last 4 years or so are the barrel-aged beers or whiskey beers or bourbon beers, or that category in particular has gotten ginormous at the GABF. In fact, they've had to split it the last few years and separate out just wood-aged beers and then wood-aged sour beers, and there's another category for strong barrel-aged beers, and so that's the other big trend I see, and that one's it's still picking up steam, but it'll be interesting to see if we get to some saturation point where that kind of where we have so many that it starts to decline. But we said the same thing about double IPAs a few years ago, and they seem to still be taking off. So
all right, well, again, congratulations on continuing to win medals, continuing to brew great beer. I wish you the best.
Thanks so much. Thanks for coming by.